They thought they had me trapped, a willing participant in their endless demands. But when my escape plan was canceled, I found a new, far more dangerous destination. The crunch of gravel in the driveway was my first warning. It was a specific sound, the sound of a car far too heavy and ostentatious for our quiet suburban street. It was the sound of my mother-in-law, Brenda, in her boat-like Lincoln Town Car. I glanced at the clock on my computer screen. 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. Right on schedule for an unscheduled, unwelcome visit. My stomach clenched. I had a huge project deadline, a complete branding guide for a new client, and the last thing I needed was Brenda's particular brand of hurricane-force disruption. My husband Liam was at work. He always seemed to be conveniently absent when his mother decided to descend upon our home like a plague of locusts in a designer pantsuit. I took a deep, calming breath, the kind my therapist taught me, and plastered on a smile that felt more like a grimace. There was no point in hiding. She had a key, a fact that was a constant source of tension between Liam and me, and she wasn't afraid to use it. Sure enough, the front door opened without so much as a courtesy knock. "Clara! You-hoo! I'm here!" Her voice trilled through the house, a sound that always managed to be both syrupy sweet and gratingly sharp at the same time. I walked out of my home office to greet her. She stood in the foyer, her eyes sweeping over the room with the critical gaze of a health inspector. She was immaculately dressed, as always, in a cream-colored cashmere sweater set that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her perfume, a cloying floral scent, arrived a full 3 seconds before she did and lingered long after she left, like the ghost of a judgmental garden. "Brenda, what a surprise," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Oh, I was just in the neighborhood," she lied breezily, patting her perfectly coiffed silver hair. She ran a manicured finger along the top of the console table. "A little dusty, dear. You have to keep on top of these things." I bit the inside of my cheek. My house was spotless. I'd cleaned it top to bottom just 2 days ago. But in Brenda's world, my best was never quite good enough. She moved past me into the living room, her gaze continuing its meticulous fault-finding mission. She was a heat-seeking missile for imagined imperfections. "Are you remembering to water this ficus? The leaves look a bit sad." "The ficus is fine, Brenda. Can I get you some water? Or tea?" I asked, hoping to steer her towards the kitchen and eventually back out the door. "No. No, I can't stay long," she said, settling herself onto my favorite armchair as if she planned to be legislating from it for the rest of the afternoon. The contradiction was pure Brenda. "I just came from seeing Chloe. Oh, the poor thing. She's just a wreck." And there it was, the real reason for her visit. My sister-in-law, Chloe, had given birth to her first child, a boy named Braden, 3 weeks ago. Chloe was Brenda's golden child, the flawless daughter who could do no wrong. Since the baby's arrival, our lives had been inundated with dramatic, tearful updates about the sheer, unprecedented difficulty of caring for a newborn. You'd think Chloe was the first woman in the history of humankind to have a baby. "How are she and Braden doing?" I asked, my smile feeling thinner by the second. Brenda sighed, a long, dramatic exhalation of maternal suffering. "Exhausted. Utterly drained. The baby just won't stop crying. Mark is no help at all. He has to work, you know. And Chloe, oh, she's not sleeping. She's barely eating. She looks like a ghost. I'm so worried she's going to waste away." I had seen Chloe 2 days ago. She looked tired, yes, as any new mother would, but she was hardly wasting away. Mark, her husband, was doting on her, and both sets of grandparents had been dropping off enough food to feed a small army. But in the grand opera of Brenda's family, Chloe was the tragic heroine, and a villain was required. I had a sinking feeling I was about to be cast in that role. Well, it's a big adjustment, I offered diplomatically. We've sent over a few meal deliveries. I hope that helped. Brenda waved a dismissive hand, the massive diamond on her finger flashing under the lamplight. Oh, that's a sweet gesture, dear. But it's a drop in the ocean. She needs more. The family needs to rally. It takes a village, you know. My blood pressure started to climb. I knew that phrase. In Brenda's mouth, it takes a village didn't mean a community of mutual support. It meant you, Clara, will do everything I say. She leaned forward, her expression turning serious. This was it. The pitch. Liam and I were talking this morning, and we've come up with a little plan to help Chloe get back on her feet. My jaw tightened. Liam hadn't mentioned any plan to me. Of course, he hadn't. He was a master of avoiding conflict, which usually meant agreeing to his mother's insane demands and then hoping I would just magically go along with it. Chloe needs round-the-clock support, Brenda continued, her voice taking on the tone of a general outlining a battle strategy. Proper support, not just a casserole dropped on the doorstep. She needs someone there, to cook for her, to clean the house so she can rest when the baby rests, to run her errands, to hold Brayden so she can take a proper shower or maybe, God willing, a nap. I stared at her, my mind a blank wall of disbelief. I knew where this was going. Every word was a stone being laid on a path leading directly to my front door. You work from home, Clara, she said, her voice softening into a grotesque parody of sweetness. Your schedule is so flexible. You don't have children of your own, so you don't have all those commitments. It just makes the most sense. I didn't say anything. I just watched her, a slow, cold anger beginning to churn in my gut. It was an old, familiar feeling. The years of being treated like the family's resident unpaid assistant, the one whose time and career were always considered less important, less real, than anyone else's. Brenda, taking my silence as acquiescence, pulled out her phone. So here's what we were thinking. I've drafted a little schedule. Starting tomorrow, you can go over to her house around 9 a.m. You can start with the breakfast dishes and a load of laundry. I have a list of meals she likes. Simple, healthy things to help her get her pre-baby body back. Then you can tidy up the living room. Maybe watch Brayden while she does her pelvic floor exercises. In the afternoon, you can run to the grocery store or the dry cleaners. She was still talking, laying out an entire month of my life as if she were my boss and I was a new hire. An entire month of indentured servitude to her daughter. My project deadline, my own life, my own needs. They didn't even register as a factor. I was just a resource to be deployed. Just then my phone buzzed on the coffee table. It was Liam. Brenda's eyes lit up. Oh, good. That's him now. Put him on speaker, dear. We can finalize everything. Reluctantly, I answered and put the phone on speaker. Hey, honey, Liam's voice said, sounding cheerful and utterly oblivious. Is Mom there? We were just chatting. She's here, Liam, I said. My voice dangerously quiet. Perfect, Brenda chirped, snatching the phone. Liam, darling, I'm just walking Clara through the schedule. She's being such a doll, completely on board with helping your sister out. Isn't that wonderful? There was a slight pause on Liam's end. Oh, yeah, that's great. See, Clara? I knew you'd want to help. It's what family does. I felt a wave of icy fury wash over me. He'd done it again. Volunteered me without asking. Promised my time and my labor away like it was his to give, all to appease his mother and sister. Brenda handed the phone back to me, her face glowing with smug satisfaction. She leaned back in the armchair, crossing her arms as if the matter was settled. It's the least you can do, Clara, she said, her voice dripping with condescension. It's your duty to serve your family. Liam was still talking on the phone, babbling about how grateful Chloe would be, how it would only be for a few weeks, how he'd make it up to me. And as he was about to sign away the next month of my life, a strange, serene calm washed over me. I looked at Brenda, my face a perfect mask of neutrality. But then I felt the corner of my mouth begin to twitch. A slow, deliberate smile spread across my lips, a smile that didn't reach my eyes. It was cold, and it was sharp. Brenda's triumphant expression faltered. She narrowed her eyes. "What's so funny, Clara? What on earth could you possibly be smiling about?" My smile felt like a shield, a thin piece of glass against a hailstorm. I held it in place, letting the silence stretch until it was thin and humming with tension. On the phone, Liam's babbling sputtered to a halt. "Clara, what's funny?" Brenda's eyes, which were the exact same shade of judgmental blue as her son's, narrowed into slits. "This isn't a joke. Your sister-in-law is suffering." "Oh, I'm not laughing at Chloe's situation," I said, my voice still light, but with an edge of steel I hadn't let them hear in years. I brought the phone closer to my mouth, making sure Liam heard every single enunciated word. "I'm just marveling at the incredible assumption you've both made." I paused, savoring the moment, the rare, intoxicating feeling of holding all the cards. "I'm afraid that schedule won't work for me." "Brenda, I'm flying to Italy in the morning." The silence that followed was absolute. It was so profound I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen. Brenda's mouth opened slightly, then closed, like a fish gasping for air. On the phone, there was just the sound of static-filled breathing. "Italy," Brenda finally managed to squeak, her voice a full octave higher than usual. "What in God's name are you talking about, Italy?" "Italy," I repeated, the word tasting like freedom. "Tuscany, to be specific. I've rented a small villa just outside of Florence for the next 3 weeks. There's a cooking school I've wanted to attend for years. I plan on visiting the Uffizi Gallery without a schedule, drinking wine that costs less than water, and remembering what it feels like to have a thought that isn't about a client's deadline or family obligations." You never said anything?" Liam's voice finally burst through the speaker, laced with indignation and disbelief. "You can't just go to Italy. We didn't talk about this." "Didn't we?" I asked, my smile finally fading into a cool, level expression. I looked directly at my mother-in-law. "Funny. You and Liam didn't seem to think it was necessary to talk to me before scheduling my entire month as Chloe's unpaid maid, cook, and nanny. It seems we have different ideas about what requires a discussion." Brenda shot up from the armchair, her face a thunderous mask of outrage. "How dare you? This is about family. Chloe is your family. She just had a baby, and you're abandoning her to go gallivanting around Europe? Abandoning her?" I let out a short, sharp laugh. "Brenda, Chloe has a husband. She has you. She has her own mother. She has a legion of friends and a freezer full of gifted lasagna. What she has is an abundance of support. What she needs, what you want, is a servant, and I am officially retiring from that position." "You are the most selfish, unfeeling woman I have ever met," she hissed, her cheeks flushed with angry red blotches. "You wouldn't understand. You don't have children. You have no idea what she's going through." There it was, the ultimate weapon, the one she unsheathed whenever she felt she was losing a fight. My childlessness, a topic Liam and I had discussed and grieved over in private, wielded by his mother as a way to prove my inherent lack of womanly compassion. The old Clara would have flinched, would have felt that familiar sting of shame and inadequacy. But the new Clara, the one with a plane ticket to Florence in her email inbox, just felt tired. "You're right, Brenda," I said. my voice dangerously calm. I don't know what it's like to be a mother, but I do know what it's like to have my career treated like a hobby. I do know what it's like to have my time considered endlessly available and worthless. I know what it's like to be the default yes for every single family problem, and I know I'm done with it. "Liam!" Brenda shrieked, grabbing my phone and holding it to her own mouth. "Are you hearing this? Your wife is completely out of control. You need to handle this. You need to tell her she is not going anywhere." She thrust the phone back at me. I could hear Liam's frantic, stressed breathing. He was caught, trapped between his domineering mother and his suddenly rebellious wife. I knew what he was going to do. He was going to fold. He was going to try and smooth things over, to find a compromise where I would still end up at Chloe's. Just maybe for 2 weeks instead of 4. "Clara, listen," he started, his voice a low, placating murmur. She's just worried. Chloe is having a hard time. Maybe we can postpone the trip. Just for a little while. We can go to Italy together next year. I promise." "No, Liam," I said simply. "What do you mean, no?" His voice sharpened. "This is ridiculous. It's completely out of the blue. You can't just book a 3-week international trip without even mentioning it to your husband." "I booked it a month ago," I said quietly. "The day Chloe announced she was being induced. Because I knew this was coming. I knew the second that baby was born, the demands would start. I knew my life, my work, my plans would be expected to grind to a halt to accommodate her. This trip wasn't an impulse, Liam. It was a life raft. I was just waiting for the inevitable flood to climb into it." Brenda scoffed and marched towards the door. "I am leaving," she announced to the room. "I cannot stay here and listen to this poison." "Liam, I expect you to fix this. Your family comes first. Your sister needs you. Call me when you've talked some sense into your wife." The door slammed shut behind her, rattling the pictures on the wall. The scent of her perfume hung in the air like an accusation. Silence. Then Liam's voice came through the phone again, no longer placating but cold and hard. The voice he used when he was backed into a corner and felt his authority was being challenged. "So that's it? You've been planning this behind my back for a month?" "It wasn't behind your back," I countered. "It was for me. A trip I'm paying for with money from my own business. The business you both seem to think is just a cute little way for me to pass the time between family crises. This isn't about your business, Clara. This is about commitment. It's about our marriage. It's about being part of a family. My sister just gave birth, and I am happy for her. But her life event does not give her, or you, or your mother, the right to dictate my life." My voice was rising, the calm facade finally cracking. "I have a huge project due, Liam. The biggest client of my career. Did you even think to ask me about my workload before you volunteered me for a month of domestic labor?" "You have to cancel it," he said flatly. The words dropped into the silence like stones. There was no room for discussion in his tone. It wasn't a suggestion. It was an order. "I don't care what it costs. You will cancel that flight." "Clara, you are not going to Italy. You are going to your sister-in-law's house tomorrow morning. We're a family, and you will do your part." "I will do my part?" I repeated the words, my voice a low, dangerous whisper. The sound of my own voice surprised me. It was a stranger's, someone who had been dormant for a very long time. "Let me tell you what my part has been in this family, Liam. My part has been to work twice as hard at my job so that we could afford this house. The house I put the down payment on, by the way. My part has been to smile and bite my tongue every time your mother insults my cooking, my decorating, my career, and my very character. My part has been to host every holiday because Chloe's apartment is too small, and your mother's condo has too many white surfaces. My part has been to be the family chauffeur, the event planner, the dog sitter, the shoulder to cry on, and the one person who is always, always expected to drop everything because someone else has a minor inconvenience. "That's not fair," he sputtered, his anger clearly giving way to panicked confusion. "We're a team." "I work hard too." "You do work hard, Liam," I conceded. "But when you get home from work, you stop. When I get home from work, or rather, when I close my office door 10 feet from the kitchen, my second shift begins. And this demand from your mother, it's not a request for help. It's a directive to begin a third shift. And for what? So Chloe doesn't have to load her own dishwasher? So Brenda can feel like a benevolent queen managing her staff? No. The answer is no. So what? You're just throwing our marriage away over this? Over helping my sister?" he demanded, his voice rising in pitch. He was losing control, and he hated it. "Our marriage?" I laughed again, and this time it was a hollow, brittle sound. "You want to talk about our marriage? A marriage is a partnership. A partnership involves respect. It involves communication. You and your mother made a decision about my life, my body, and my time, without even the courtesy of a conversation. You didn't present it to me as an idea. You presented it as a completed plan. That's not a partnership, Liam. That's a boss and an employee, and I've just been informed that my position has been outsourced to your sister, effective immediately." "You're being hysterical, Clara. You're blowing this completely out of proportion." "Am I?" I walked over to the bookshelf and pulled out a photo album from our wedding. I opened it to a picture of us, smiling, looking so young and full of hope. The man I married would have told his mother she was out of line. The man I married would have defended me. He would have told her that my career is important and my time is valuable. He would have asked me, "Clara, what do you think? How can we help Chloe together?" He would not have called me to ratify a decision that had already been made for me. I closed the album with a soft thud. "I don't know who you are anymore, Liam, but you are not the man I married." There was a long, heavy silence on the line. I think for the first time, he realized this wasn't just an argument I was trying to win. It was a line I was drawing. Finally he spoke, his voice ice cold. "I'm on my way home. We are going to talk about this. And you are going to listen to reason. Don't do anything stupid." The line went dead. He had hung up on me. For a moment I just stood there in the silent house, the phone still in my hand. The lingering scent of Brenda's perfume felt suffocating. I looked around the living room, at the ficus tree she'd criticized, the console table she'd declared dusty. For years, this house had been my sanctuary, the one place I had control. But I realized now it had become a cage, beautifully decorated, but a cage nonetheless. And the zookeepers were on their way. "Don't do anything stupid." His words echoed in my head. What he meant was, "Don't defy me. Stay put. Wait for your husband to come home and put you back in your place." A fire ignited in my chest. I walked calmly into my office, sat at my desk, and forwarded my work calls to my cell phone. I set up an email autoresponder stating that I was out of the country on a pre-planned trip and would have limited access to email. Then I walked upstairs to our bedroom. I pulled my large suitcase from the top of the closet, the one we used for long vacations. It landed on the bed with a satisfying whump. I opened the drawers of my dresser, pulling out clothes not for Chloe's house, but for Florence. Linen pants, comfortable walking shoes, a few simple dresses for evenings out, my swimsuit for the villa's pool. My movements were fluid, efficient. There was no panic, no hysteria, just a profound, chilling sense of purpose. I was not just packing for a trip. I was packing for my life. With every folded shirt, I felt a layer of resentment, of stifled frustration, fall away. I was shedding the skin of the person they expected me to be, the compliant, ever-accommodating Clara. The one who smoothed things over and never made waves. That person was gone. She'd died on the phone somewhere between Liam saying, "You will," and me saying no. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It wasn't Liam. It was a text from a number I didn't have saved, but I knew instantly who it was from. Chloe. The message read, "Mom told me you're refusing to help me. I can't believe you'd be so selfish. I just gave birth. I thought you were my sister." Some of us have real problems, Clara. Asterisk, I stared at the text. The sheer, unadulterated entitlement of it. They were already circling the wagons, painting me as the villain in their little drama. The selfish, childless shrew who was abandoning the saintly new mother in her time of need. I didn't even bother to craft a reply. I just deleted the message, blocked the number, and continued packing. I zipped the suitcase shut. It was heavy, full of a future I was finally choosing for myself. Liam would be home any minute. He'd use his key, walk in expecting to find me sitting on the sofa, cowed and ready to apologize. He was expecting a fight, an argument, maybe some tears. He was not expecting this. I wheeled the suitcase into the hallway just as I heard the distinct sound of a key sliding into the front door lock. It was the same sound that had announced Brenda's arrival, but now it sounded different. Not like an annoyance, but like a starting gun. The doorknob began to turn. The click of the lock turning was a thunderclap in the quiet house. I stood at the top of the stairs, my hand resting on the handle of my suitcase. My knuckles white. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs, but my mind was a sea of absolute calm. This was it. The point of no return. Liam pushed the door open, his shoulders hunched with a mixture of anger and self-righteousness. He was still wearing his suit from work, but his tie was loosened and his hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it in frustration during the drive home. "Clara!" he called out, his voice echoing in the foyer. He clearly expected me to come running from the living room, ready for the lecture he'd prepared. He tossed his keys into the ceramic bowl on the console table with a clatter that spoke of irritation. "We need to talk. Now!" He strode into the living room, then stopped, a puzzled frown on his face when he didn't find me there. He turned, his eyes scanning the empty space, and then he looked up. His gaze landed on me, standing at the top of the landing. Then it dropped to the large suitcase beside me. His face, which had been a mask of stern authority, crumpled. The color drained from it, leaving him looking pale and suddenly very young under the warm glow of the hall light. Confusion warred with disbelief in his eyes. What is that?" he stammered, pointing a trembling finger at the suitcase. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving, Liam," I said, my voice even and steady. I was surprised at how clear it sounded, with no hint of the tremor I felt deep inside. "Leaving? What do you mean, leaving?" He took a step towards the stairs, his hands held out as if to physically stop my words from being true. "You're going to the airport now? Your flight isn't until the morning." He was trying to fit this into the narrative he understood. I was being dramatic, making a point, but ultimately, this was still just about the Italy trip. "My flight to Italy is in the morning, yes," I confirmed, "but I'm not just leaving for the airport. I'm leaving you." The words hung in the air between us, heavy and irreversible. Liam froze at the bottom of the stairs, staring up at me as if he'd never seen me before. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. For a man who always had an answer, always had a way of twisting a situation to his advantage, he was utterly speechless. You can't be serious," he finally managed to get out, his voice barely a whisper. "You're leaving me? Because I asked you to help my sister? Because of one argument?" "It's not one argument, Liam. Can't you see that?" I began to pull the suitcase behind me. taking the first step down. The wheels rumbled softly on the hardwood. This is just the one argument that broke the dam. This is about years of being taken for granted. It's about years of my opinion being the last one asked, if it's asked at all. It's about my life being treated as a flexible commodity that can be rescheduled and reallocated to fit the needs of your family. With each step I took down the stairs, his confusion morphed back into anger. It was a more comfortable emotion for him, a shield against the hurt. "So you're a martyr now? Is that it?" he sneered, his voice regaining its strength. Poor Clara, slaving away for the evil in-laws. "Don't be so dramatic. I provide a good life for you. We have a beautiful home. We have everything we need." "You have everything you need, Liam," I corrected him, stopping halfway down the staircase so we were almost at eye level. "You have a wife who manages the house, your social life, and your entire family's emotional baggage. You have a mother who thinks you're a perfect son because your wife handles all her unreasonable demands so you don't have to. What I have is a business I've built from scratch that your family thinks is a joke, a husband who volunteers me for jobs without my consent, and a future that looks like an endless cycle of catering to everyone but myself." "This is insane," he shouted, finally losing his composure completely. He ran a hand through his hair, his face flushed. "You're throwing away 10 years of marriage. Over what? A few weeks of helping Chloe?" "She's family." "I'm not the one who threw it away," I said softly. "You did. You threw it away every time you said, 'Calm down, Mom's just like that.' You threw it away every time you let her make a snide comment at my expense and said nothing. You threw it away every time you promised we'd do something, just the two of us, and then canceled because Chloe had a crisis. And today you didn't just throw it away. You handed it over to your mother on a silver platter and told her to do with it as she pleased. You told me, 'I will do my part.' You didn't ask. You commanded. And I will not be commanded." I reached the bottom of the stairs and stood before him in the foyer. He was taller than me, broader, but for the first time I didn't feel small in his presence. I felt his anger radiating off him, but it couldn't touch me. He looked from my resolute face to the suitcase, and a flicker of genuine panic entered his eyes. He was finally realizing this wasn't a bluff. Okay, fine," he said, his hands raised in a gesture of surrender. "You win. You made your point. You don't have to help Chloe. Go to Italy. Go for 3 weeks. I don't care. Just take the damn suitcase back upstairs. This is crazy." It was a classic Liam move, a tactical retreat conceding the battle to win the war. He thought that giving me the trip was all it would take to make everything go back to normal. He thought this was still about Italy. I just shook my head slowly. "It's too late for that, Liam. You showed me who you are today. You showed me that when I'm pushed, you won't stand with me. You'll stand with your mother. You'll always choose them over me." "That's not true." "Isn't it?" I challenged. "Your mother called me selfish, unfeeling, and out of control. And you told me to listen to reason. Your sister texted me to say I have no real problems. Your family has already decided I'm the villain. And you know what? I'm done auditioning for the role of the hero in a story where I'm always destined to lose." I pulled the handle of my suitcase up and turned toward the door. His hand shot out and grabbed my arm. Not hard, not painfully, but firmly, a gesture of ownership. "You are not walking out that door," he said, his voice low and menacing. I looked down at his hand on my arm, then back up at his face. His eyes were dark with a fury I'd never seen before. It was the fury of a man whose world was tilting off its axis, whose authority had been utterly and completely rejected. And in that moment, I wasn't just angry anymore. I was scared. The pressure of his fingers on my arm was a physical manifestation of the last 10 years. It was the weight of every unspoken resentment, every swallowed retort, every moment I had shrunk myself to make room for his family's ego. I didn't try to pull away. I just stood there, my gaze locked on his, unwavering. The fear was a cold knot in my stomach, but it was overshadowed by a fierce, protective resolve. "Let go of me, Liam," I said. My voice didn't shake. It was as cold and hard as a piece of granite. "No," he breathed, his grip tightening almost imperceptibly. "We are going to go into the living room. We are going to sit down, and we are going to talk this through like adults. You are my wife. You are not leaving." "A husband doesn't have to hold his wife hostage to get her to stay," I shot back. "A husband earns her desire to stay. You stopped earning that a long time ago. Now, I am telling you for the last time. Let go." His jaw worked, a muscle pulsing in his cheek. He was a cornered animal, lashing out because he had no other recourse. He had lost the argument with logic. He had lost it with emotion. And now all he had left was this pathetic attempt at physical intimidation. For a wild, terrifying second, I thought he might actually try to drag me away from the door. And then a sound cut through the tension. The high-pitched, cheerful chime of my phone from my pocket. It was the notification I had set. A text from the car service I'd booked. "Your driver Marco has arrived. He is waiting for you in a black sedan." Liam's head snapped towards the front window, as if he could see the car through the closed blinds. His grip on my arm loosened in surprise. That was my chance. I wrenched my arm free, stumbling back a step. The contact was broken. I could breathe again. "You booked a car?" he asked, his voice laced with fresh disbelief. "You really planned all of this?" "I planned for contingencies, Liam," I said, rubbing my arm where his fingers had been. "It's what a good project manager does. And you, your mother, your entire family, you've become a contingency I'm no longer willing to manage." I didn't wait for his response. I turned, my back to him, and reached for the doorknob. It felt like crossing a finish line. I twisted the deadbolt, the sound echoing the finality of my decision. "Clara, don't!" His voice was desperate now, the anger replaced by a raw, pleading panic that I had never heard from him before. "Don't do this. Think about what you're doing. Think about our life, our friends, this house." I paused with my hand on the doorknob, but I didn't turn around. "I have thought about it, Liam. I've thought about it every lonely night you stayed late at work, every holiday I spent sweating in the kitchen, every time your mother made me feel like an outsider in my own home. I've been thinking about it for years. The only thing that's changed is now I'm finally doing something about it." I pulled the door open. The cool evening air washed over me, a welcome shock to my senses. It smelled like rain and freedom. Outside, parked at the curb, was a sleek black sedan, its headlights cutting through the twilight. The driver, a man in a crisp suit, saw me and stepped out, moving toward the trunk of his car. "Don't you walk out that door, Clara!" Liam yelled from behind me. "If you walk out that door, don't you ever expect to come back? I mean it. This will be over. Everything. Your things, the house, all of it." He was throwing threats, the last weapons in his depleted arsenal. He thought the house, the life we'd built, were chains that would hold me. He still didn't understand. They were the very things I was running from. I stepped over the threshold, pulling my suitcase behind me. The wheels bumped down the single step from the porch to the walkway. It was a small drop, but it felt like a leap across a chasm. I was on the other side now. I walked down the stone path without looking back. I could feel his eyes burning into my back. I could feel the entire history of our life together trying to pull me back into that house, back into that role he had created for me. But the pull of the future, of the quiet villa in Tuscany, of a life where I was the main character, was stronger. The driver, Marco, met me halfway. He had a kind, professional smile. "Mrs. Evans?" "Just Clara, please," I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. "Of course," Let me get that for you, Clara. He took the handle of the suitcase from my hand and effortlessly lifted it, carrying it towards the open trunk. I kept walking towards the passenger door. I could hear the front door of my house slam shut. I risked a glance back and saw Liam standing on the porch, silhouetted against the warm light of the foyer. He wasn't yelling anymore. He was just watching me, his shoulders slumped in defeat. He looked small and powerless. I got into the back of the car. The leather seats were cool and smooth. Marco closed my door with a soft, solid thud, shutting out the world I was leaving behind. He put my suitcase in the trunk, got into the driver's seat, and turned to me. "To the airport, ma'am?" he asked, his eyes meeting mine in the rear-view mirror. "No," I said, surprising myself. A new plan, a better plan, was forming in my mind. The flight wasn't until 7 a.m. It was only 6 p.m. now. I had time. "Take me to the Marriott downtown, please. I'll go to the airport from there in the morning." I didn't want to spend the night in a sterile airport hotel. I wanted a comfortable bed, a glass of expensive wine from room service, and one night of absolute peace before my new life began. "Of course," he said, putting the car into drive. As we pulled away from the curb, I looked back at the house one last time. My house. Liam was gone from the porch. The lights were on, making it look warm, sermon inviting, a picture-perfect image of domestic bliss. It was a beautiful lie. My phone buzzed again. I looked down, expecting it to be another desperate text from Liam, or maybe a furious one from Brenda. But it wasn't. It was an email notification. The subject line made my blood run cold. "Urgent. Regarding your flight to Florence, FLR, tomorrow." My hand trembled as I opened it. It was from the airline. My flight, the one I had just detonated my entire life for, the very symbol of my escape, had been canceled due to a sudden, unannounced strike by Italian air traffic controllers. The words on the screen blurred, swimming in a haze of disbelief. Canceled. It was a single word, a digital guillotine that had just severed my lifeline. The villa in Tuscany, the cooking school, the Uffizi Gallery, the entire carefully constructed fantasy of my escape, it all evaporated in an instant, leaving behind a cold, acrid smoke of panic. The car continued its smooth journey away from my old life, but now I had no destination. I was just a woman in the back of a black sedan with a suitcase full of clothes for a country I couldn't get to. For a moment the world tilted. The irony was so crushing, so cosmically cruel, it was almost funny. I had just delivered the performance of a lifetime. I had stood up to my husband, my mother-in-law, and the suffocating weight of 10 years of expectations. I had walked out that door feeling powerful, resolute, like the hero of my own story. And now I was a punchline. The universe had listened to my grand declaration of independence and replied with a bureaucratic shrug. "Sorry, try again later." My first instinct was primal, childish. I wanted to tell the driver to turn around. I wanted to go back, to sheepishly knock on the door, to pretend the whole thing was a momentary lapse in judgment. I imagined Liam's face, the smug, triumphant, "I told you so." Look, that would replace his panic. I imagined Brenda's victory lap. The thought was so horrifying, so utterly unbearable, that it jolted me out of my despair. No, I couldn't go back. Going back was not an option. Walking back through that door would be worse than defeat. It would be a surrender of my very soul. I would never have this momentum, this courage again. If I went back now, I would be trapped forever. My one act of rebellion forever held over my head as a hysterical tantrum. I took a deep, shuddering breath, forcing the air into my tight lungs. "Change of plans," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Marco glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his expression professionally neutral. "Can you take me to the airport after all? The international terminal?" "Of course, Clara," he said. His voice calm and unbothered. He navigated the turn onto the freeway ramp with practiced ease. I wasn't going to Italy, but I was going somewhere. My mind raced, fingers flying across my phone screen. I was a project manager. This was just a catastrophic, last-minute project failure. You don't scrap the project, you pivot. You find a solution. I pulled up a flight search engine, my brain working faster than it had in years, fueled by pure adrenaline. Where could I go? Tonight. Right now. Somewhere far away. Somewhere beautiful. Somewhere Liam would never think to look. The search parameters were simple. One adult, one way, departing tonight, destination, anywhere. The results began to load. Paris, London, Madrid, all probably affected by the same European strikes. I scrolled past them. Tokyo, too complicated with visas and planning. Sydney, too long a flight, too much time to think. And then I saw it. A single seat left on a red-eye flight leaving in 3 hours. It felt like a sign. Lisbon, Portugal. I knew almost nothing about it, except for pictures I'd seen of colorful tiled buildings and dramatic coastlines. It wasn't the rolling hills of Tuscany, but it was a way. It was an adventure. It was a blank page. It was perfect. Without a second thought, I tapped Book Now. I entered my information, my credit card number a blur under my trembling fingers. The confirmation screen appeared. QR code, boarding pass, gate B12. It was real. I had a new destination. A wave of giddy relief washed over me. I almost laughed out loud. They thought they could stop me. A canceled flight was nothing. I was resourceful. I was resilient. The life I had lived for the past decade had been one long exercise in managing the unmanageable. This was easy. As the car sped towards the airport, my phone began to ring. It was Liam. I ignored it. It rang again immediately. I declined the call and blocked his number. A moment later, a text came through from an unknown number. Brenda. Liam is beside himself. You have destroyed him. Whatever childish game you are playing, you need to end it right now and come home. Your family is waiting for you. Her words had lost their sting. Your family. She meant his family. I had never truly been a part of it. Just a featured guest star with a long list of duties. I deleted her message and blocked her number too. Then, for good measure, I blocked Chloe and a half dozen of Liam's relatives who I knew would be weaponized as flying monkeys in the coming hours. The silence on my phone was blissful. Marco pulled up to the curb at the International Departures Terminal. Here we are, he said. Thank you, Marco, I said, my voice filled with genuine gratitude. You have no idea. He got my suitcase from the trunk and placed it on the curb. I tipped him generously, and he touched the brim of his hat before getting back in the car and driving away. And then, I was alone. Standing on the curb, surrounded by the chaotic ballet of travelers coming and going. The air buzzed with energy, with anticipation, with the promise of elsewhere. I took a deep breath, rolled my suitcase behind me, and walked through the sliding glass doors into the bright, sprawling terminal. The check-in process was a blur. The security line was long but moved quickly. I was on autopilot, moving with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a decade. I was no longer Clara, the accommodating wife and daughter-in-law. I was a traveler, an adventurer, a woman with a one-way ticket and no plan beyond the next 12 hours. After clearing security, I found my gate and saw that my flight was on time. I had an hour to spare. I found a quiet bar with a view of the tarmac, ordered a large glass of ridiculously overpriced Sauvignon Blanc, and sat down at a small table. Planes were taking off and landing outside the huge window, soaring into the dark, star-dusted sky. Each one felt like a victory. I took a sip of wine. It was crisp and cold and perfect. I felt the tension finally begin to drain from my shoulders. I had done it. I had actually done it. It was messy and terrifying and not at all what I had planned, but I had gotten out. I pulled out my phone to text my sister, the one person in the world I knew would understand, to let her know I was safe and what had happened. But as the screen lit up, I saw a new email. It wasn't from an airline. The sender's name made my heart stop cold. It was from Liam. He must have sent it from his work address before I blocked him. The subject line was just 2 words. Quote, 0. My hand started to shake again. I opened it. There was no text in the body of the email. There was only an attachment, a single image file. With a growing sense of dread, I tapped to download it. The image loaded slowly, line by line. It was a screenshot of our joint bank account, the main checking account, the one my business revenue was deposited into, the one I had used to pay the down payment on the house, and it was completely empty, drained to a balance of $0.00. The numbers on the screen, a string of perfect mocking zeros, seemed to burn into my retinas. $0. 0 cents. The account that held my emergency fund, the money for my quarterly taxes. The entire operating capital of my business was gone. It was a digital crater, a void where my security used to be. The wine in my mouth suddenly tasted like acid. I stared at the screenshot, my mind struggling to process the sheer malice of it. This wasn't a desperate, panicked act. This was calculated, vicious. He had gone home, logged into our online banking, and systematically transferred every single penny out of our joint account into an account I couldn't access. The subject line, quote 1, wasn't just about the house. It was a threat. He was reminding me that my name might be on the deed, but he now controlled all the liquid assets. He was trying to financially cripple me, to leave me stranded, and force me to come crawling back, tail between my legs, begging for his forgiveness. The fury that rose in me was a pure white-hot flame. It burned away the last vestiges of fear and doubt, the hurt, the sadness, the 10 years of love and memories. They were all incinerated in that single, clarifying blast of rage. He hadn't just taken the money. He had taken my work, my sleepless nights, the fruits of my labor that he and his family had so casually dismissed as a hobby, and he was attempting to use it as a weapon against me. He thought he could break me. He still had no idea who I was. My fingers flew across the phone screen, my movements sharp and precise. I logged into my own banking app, my heart hammering against my ribs. I went straight to our joint savings account, the one we rarely touched, where we kept a substantial nest egg for someday. He had been sloppy. In his rage, he had focused on the main checking account, the one with the immediate cash flow. He had forgotten about this one. Or maybe he just hadn't gotten to it yet. The balance was still there, a significant 6-figure number that made me gasp with relief. It was our life savings. Half of it earned by him, but half of it earned by me. And right now, it was my only lifeline. There was no time to think, no time to consider the ethics or the implications. This was war. He had fired the first shot, a devastating financial blitzkrieg designed to leave me destitute. I was just responding in kind. I initiated a transfer entire balance. I selected my personal checking account at a different bank, one he didn't have access to, an account I had kept open from before we were married. My fingers trembled as I hit confirm. The screen spun for a moment. Then a green check mark appeared. Transfer successful. I took a shaky breath. I had just escalated things beyond all recognition. There was no going back from this. We were no longer a married couple having an argument. We were 2 combatants on a financial battlefield, and I had just captured his war chest. My phone buzzed. It was a new email from his work address. The subject line, "Forgot something?" The body of the email was just as succinct as the first. "Check your credit card." A cold dread, entirely different from the first, washed over me. I closed the banking app and opened the app for our joint credit card. The card was in my name, but he was an authorized user. It was the card we used for all our household expenses, the one I paid off in full every month from my business account, the account that was now empty. The main screen loaded, and I saw it. A long, devastating list of pending charges, all made within the last hour. A charge for over $10,000 at a luxury watch website. Another for $8,000 at a high-end electronics store for a top-of-the-line home theater system. A $5,000 charge for a first-class, fully refundable ticket to Hawaii on a different airline. He was maxing out the card, spending money with wild abandon, knowing full well that the bill would be my responsibility. It was a scorched earth policy. He wasn't just trying to take my money, he was trying to bury me in debt. He was trying to ruin me. I felt a dizzying wave of nausea. I had the savings, yes, but this was a whole other level of vindictive cruelty. He was attacking my credit, my financial future. He was salting the earth so that nothing could grow again after I was gone. Quote 4. A calm voice announced over the airport's PA system. That was my flight, my escape. The gate was just a few feet away. I could see people starting to line up, passports and boarding passes in hand. They were all moving forward, towards their futures, while mine was being systematically dismantled by a man I used to love, thousands of miles away. I had a choice. I could get on that plane. I could fly to Lisbon, find a cheap hostel, and spend the next few weeks trying to untangle this mess from afar, fighting a legal battle from across an ocean. Or a different idea began to form in my mind. A wild, audacious, terrifying idea. He thought I was running away. He thought he could sit back in our beautiful home, surrounded by his new toys, and wait for me to come crawling back, defeated. He was expecting me to be a victim. He was not expecting me to fight back. Not like this. I stood up, leaving my half-finished glass of wine on the table. I walked out of the bar, my suitcase rolling silently behind me. I walked past my gate, past the line of people waiting to board the flight to my new life in Lisbon. I walked until I reached the departure screen, a massive wall of destinations and times. I scanned the list, my eyes searching for a single city. And there it was, a flight leaving in 45 minutes, from a gate at the opposite end of the terminal. There were still seats available. I pulled out my phone one last time and opened the airline app. My Lisbon boarding pass was still there, a glowing QR code of a life I was now abandoning. With a steady finger, I hit cancel flight. I took the flight credit it offered, and then I booked a new ticket, a one-way ticket. It was an act of pure madness. It was throwing a lit match into a room full of gasoline. But as the confirmation screen for my new flight appeared on my phone, I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel angry. I felt a strange, exhilarating calm. The kind of calm you feel when you've lost everything and have nothing left to lose. Liam thought he was playing chess, moving his pieces to corner my king. He didn't realize I was about to flip the whole board over. He thought he knew where I was going. He thought I was thousands of miles away, running for cover. He would never, in a million years, expect me to be on a flight to his company's annual leadership conference, the one he was scheduled to speak at tomorrow morning. The one being held in Scottsdale, Arizona? The flight to Scottsdale was a strange, surreal bubble of time. I didn't sleep. I just stared out the window at the dark, sprawling landscape of America passing beneath me, my mind a whirring engine of strategy. The anger had cooled from a raging inferno to a solid, determined core of ice. Liam had intended to ruin me financially and emotionally, to leave me stranded and powerless. He had grossly, fatally underestimated me. He had forgotten that I knew all his secrets. I had managed his life for 10 years. I knew his schedule. I knew his colleagues. And most importantly, I knew his greatest vulnerability, his carefully constructed professional image. Liam's entire career was built on a persona of being a calm, collected, family-oriented leader. At company functions, I was the charming, supportive wife, an essential prop in the theater of his success. He was being groomed for a major promotion, and this conference was his coronation. He was giving the keynote speech at 10 a.m. to the entire executive board, including the CEO. A famously old-school patriarch who valued loyalty and stability above all else. Liam's personal life collapsing in a spectacular public fashion was not part of the brand. I landed in Phoenix around midnight, the dry desert air a shock after the cool evening I'd left behind. I took a cab to the sprawling luxury resort where the conference was being held. I walked into the gleaming marble-floored lobby, pulling my suitcase behind me, and strode confidently to the front desk. "Hi," I said to the concierge, giving him a warm, slightly weary smile. "My husband Liam Evans checked in earlier for the conference. I'm his wife, Clara. My flight was delayed, and I think he's already asleep. Could I possibly get a key to our room?" The man smiled politely. "Of course, Mrs. Evans. Let me just check the reservation." He tapped at his keyboard. His smile faltered slightly. "I see. Ma'am, it looks like your husband booked a king room for a single occupant." I feigned a look of mild embarrassment. "Oh, honestly, that man," I said, laughing it off. "He probably thought I wouldn't be able to make it at the last minute with all the chaos at home. My sister-in-law just had a baby, you know how it is. Family first. But I couldn't bear to miss his big speech. Could you just add me to the room?" "I can show you my ID. We have the same last name and address." I pushed my driver's license across the counter. It was a gamble, but a calculated one. In the world of high-end corporate events, smoothing things over for the wives of important executives was part of the job. He looked at the ID, at me, and back at his screen. After a moment that stretched into an eternity, he gave me a professional nod. "Of course, Mrs. Evans. My apologies. Let me just issue you a key card. Room 734. He handed me the slim plastic key. It felt heavier than a block of gold. "Thank you so much," I said, my voice dripping with sincerity. "You're a lifesaver." The ride up in the elevator was the longest of my life. I walked down the plushly carpeted hallway, the silence amplifying the frantic beat of my heart. I stood outside room 734 for a full minute, just breathing. Then, I slid the key into the lock. The light flashed green. I turned the handle and pushed the door open. The room was dark and quiet except for the low hum of the air conditioning. In the faint light from the window, I could see the outline of Liam, fast asleep in the king-sized bed. His briefcase was on a chair. His suit for the next day hung neatly on the back of the door. He was sleeping the sound, untroubled sleep of a man who believed he had won, who thought his problems were an ocean away. Quietly, I closed the door behind me. I didn't turn on the lights. I slipped off my shoes and sat down in the armchair in the corner of the room, my suitcase at my feet. And I waited. The first rays of dawn were just beginning to filter through the curtains when he started to stir. He grunted, rolled over, and then his eyes slowly opened. He blinked a few times, adjusting to the dim light. And then he saw me. He shot upright in bed, the sheets pooling around his waist. All the color drained from his face, replaced by a ghastly, pale shock. He looked like he had seen a ghost. "Clara?" he whispered, his voice a raw croak of disbelief. "What? How?" "Hello, Liam," I said, my voice calm and even. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" He stared at me, his mind clearly struggling to reconcile my presence in this room with the fact that I was supposed to be in Portugal. "The flight. It was canceled," he stammered. "It was," I said, allowing myself a small, cold smile. "But I'm resourceful. You should know that. I've been managing your life for a decade, after all." I leaned forward, my elbows on my knees. "You drained our bank account. You tried to bury me in debt. You thought you could leave me with nothing. His shock was rapidly being replaced by his familiar blustering anger. "I gave you the life you have. That was my money." "Was it?" I countered, my voice dangerously low. "That was our money." "Liam, money from the business you called a hobby. And you didn't just take it. You tried to destroy me. You tried to make it impossible for me to survive without you. That wasn't just ending a marriage. That was an act of war." He threw the covers back and stood up, wearing nothing but his boxers. He was trying to be intimidating, to physically dominate the space. It didn't work. He just looked pathetic. "You need to leave," he hissed. "Now! Before someone sees you." "Oh, I think they'll see me," I said sweetly. "In about 2 hours, I plan on having a very nice breakfast in the hotel restaurant. I might run into your boss, Bob. You know how he loves to talk about his grandkids. I'm sure he'd be fascinated to hear about the new addition to our family, and just how stressful it's been. So stressful, in fact, that my devoted husband had to max out our credit cards on watches and electronics to cope." His face went white. He knew exactly what I was threatening: the image, the persona, the promotion. "And then," I continued, standing up and walking slowly towards him, "around 10 a.m., I think I'll take a seat in the front row for your big keynote speech. I'll be the woman who looks like she hasn't slept in 24 hours. The woman who looks like her whole world has just been shattered. People will wonder. They'll talk. And when you get up on that stage to talk about stability and long-term growth, I'll be there in the front row, your loving, supportive wife. Unless, of course, you'd rather I stand up and tell everyone the real story." He just stared at me, speechless. He was trapped. Checkmate. "You wouldn't," he whispered. But there was no conviction in his voice. He knew I would. He could see it in my eyes. I had nothing left to lose. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice now a sharp, business-like command. "You are going to take your phone. You are going to transfer every single cent you took from the checking account back into it. Then, you are going to transfer your half of the savings account into your own personal account. I'm keeping my half. We're splitting it, right here, right now. You will then call every single one of those companies and cancel the fraudulent orders you placed on my credit card. And finally, you will email our lawyer and tell him we are filing for divorce, that it's uncontested, and that I get the house. I made the down payment, and I will be buying you out of your half of the equity with the money from the savings account. Is that clear?" He just stood there, shaking his head in disbelief. "Clara." "Is that clear, Liam?" I repeated, my voice like ice. He looked at my face, at the unyielding resolve he saw there, and he finally understood. He had lost. He slumped onto the edge of the bed and picked up his phone. With trembling fingers, he did everything I told him to do. I watched over his shoulder, verifying every transfer, every cancellation. When he was done, he looked up at me, his eyes hollow. "Is that it? Are you happy now? You've ruined me." "No, Liam," I said, picking up my suitcase. "You ruined yourself. I'm just starting to build myself back up." I walked out of the hotel room without a backward glance. I didn't go to breakfast. I didn't stay for his speech. I just went down to the lobby, checked out of the room I had never slept in, and took a cab back to the airport. Sitting in the departure lounge, I booked a new flight. It wasn't to Italy or Portugal. It was a flight home, to my house. As the plane took off, soaring into the bright, cloudless Arizona sky, I felt a profound sense of peace. It wasn't the triumphant, dramatic ending I might have imagined. It was something better. It was quiet. It was real. I didn't know what my future held, but for the first time in a very long time, I knew it was mine to write. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that I would never, ever serve anyone again.